good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you once more. It has been a while since I've seen some of you in person, but via this way we can still connect, and we know that we are still children of the Lord and look forward to that day. We'll meet each other again in the New Jerusalem. What I wanted to share with you for this evening is entitled Corona Crown New World Order with a question mark. And as a text for that, I have taken the text from the Revelation 14, verses 6 and 7, where it says, Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and springs of water. Now I assume that for some of you, this is not a new text, the text that you have read already before. As Seventh-day Adventists, we are keen on prophecy. We speak about it, but sometimes also I hear some saying, and they then say, well, the prophecies are there, but are we really, will we really experience what the prophecies are talking about as we as Seventh-day Adventists interpret it? So I decided for myself to look around and see in current time that we live in, what is happening in relation to prophecy. And for that, I've made a selection of a few things that I found. There's more, but for the time that we are here together, I made a selection to share with you to see how current events that are evolving relate to Bible prophecy. So what I found was here also, this is in a Dutch newspaper, where it's speaking about the Pope calling all Christians to pray together the Lord's Prayer. And then it says there, as it is written in Dutch, that the Protestant Church is joining wholeheartedly. So the Pope, the Catholic Church, is calling to pray together, and the Protestants, who are by the virtue of their name protesting in regard to the Catholic Church, join wholeheartedly together in this. And that is something that we read in the prophecies that was going to take place. And here we see that already taking place. Another thing is what I found that was happening last year, where the Pope gave on March 27 a special blessing, the Urbi, Orbi blessing, a blessing that is usually only given in certain times, but he here did it also in regard to the corona crisis that we are facing. And as you can see here on the screen, where I put up from the website Aletheia, where it says that we can say that never in history has anything like this happened. This blessing, Urbi e Orbi, that is from the city and also to the countryside, where the blessing is given, is usually given only on very special occasions, but here it was on a not so special occasion, but in regard to the corona crisis, and that has never in history happened before. Why is the Pope doing such a thing in relation to the corona crisis? And a good question to ask. Well, he speaks in this blessing on the storm that was on this, the sea where the disciples were in, and the text you can still find on the Vatican website. And there it says, among other things, that just like the disciples who spoke anxiously with one voice saying, we are perishing, then he says, so we, taking it to us today, we too have realized that we cannot go on thinking of ourselves, but only together can we do this. So he is speaking about the crisis that we are facing, that we together have to do this, and we cannot just think of ourselves and perhaps also think for ourselves, because he says we have realized, as we now have come in this also unexpected turbulent storm, we have realized that we are on the same boat, all of us fragile and disoriented, but at the same time, important and needed, all of us are called to row together, each of us in need of comforting. And the other on this boat, we are here together and we have to do this together. But also he says it's a time that we live in now to get our lives back on track with regard to you, Lord, and to others. So it's a time, as the Pope is here expressing, that we should make changes so we can get back on track. Well, of course, the track that he is then presenting, but that we can change the world we live in to make it different than it was before. He also speaks about this in the Laudato Si encyclical from the Pope Francis. And in that encyclical, he speaks about different elements, but not going too deep into this encyclical. I have put a few things here that talk about that Laudato Si, but before we go into the details there, it's interesting to see that there's more interest in the Pope's ideas among non-believers than among the faithful. So the non-believers, non-Catholics, though those that do not even believe in God, they find the Pope's ideas more interesting than those that do believe. So if you want to bring them together, as the Pope is speaking about, we are in the same boat together, believers, non-believers, or whatever you believe, then it's interesting to note that the ideas of the Pope also find a good reflection with non-believers. But the trend that we see in this Laudato Si is that was written, by the way, in 2015 already, so a little while ago. There he speaks about this, that in this way he gave humanity the chance of a new beginning. So as he is now speaking in regard to the corona crisis, it is a moment where we can get back on track. We can make a new beginning. It's actually a resounding of what he has already written in 2015 in his encyclical Laudato Si. But he also says that the biblical tradition clearly shows that this renewal entails recovering and respecting the rhythms inscribed in nature by the hand of the Creator. Now, as we look around in the world today, there's emphasis put on nature, that we have to be sustainable and so on, that we have to take care of nature better than we have done before. But here he relates it also that the renewal, the new beginning, to get back on track is to respect the rhythms that are there in nature. But what are then the rhythms that he speaks about? Well, he says, Sunday is meant to be a day which heals our relationship with God, with ourselves, with others, and with the world. So if we speak about a new beginning to get back on track, more or less speaking about healing, he here talks about that Sunday is a day that can assist in that. And he even speaks about the law of weekly rest, the rhythm in nature, the weekly rhythm that is there, the law of the weekly rest that we need is here put forward as an element of renewal and a new beginning that we should do. Now, in that sense, the trend that we see in the Laudato Si, see we also coming in the blessings of Urbi and Orbi, that we are on the same boat, fragile and disoriented. We have to get back on track, and we cannot go on thinking of ourselves. Only together we can do this to get back on track with God and also, and primarily perhaps with others. So it's a resounding of what he wrote in his encyclical, where he's speaking about to get back on track, but to start with a new beginning. Now, in the meantime, he also written another encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, that is together, is he speaking about here, fraternity and social friendship, where he speaks about in the new encyclical. But some interesting things come forward in this Fratelli Tutti also. He speaks there about pandemics and other calamities in history, and he says there, true, a worldwide tragedy like the COVID-19 pandemic momentarily revived the sense that we are a global community all in the same boat, as he also said in the Urbi and Orbi blessing, where one person's problems are the problems of all. Once more, we realize that no one is saved alone. We can only be saved together. So it's not about an individual relationship that you may have with God. It is together. As I said in those days, the storm has exposed our vulnerability and uncovered those false and superfluous certainties around which we constructed our daily schedules, our projects, our habits, and priorities. Amid this storm, the facade of those stereotypes with which we camouflaged our egos always worrying about appearances has fallen away, revealing once more the ineluctable and blessed awareness that we are part of one another, that we are brothers and sisters of one another. Now, although this sounds nice if you perhaps hear it for the first time, if you look into what he is saying, he's again emphasizing that we are in this together, not by yourself, but we have to work together in this. And then he also says that the daily schedules we have, our projects, our habits, and priorities, he's actually leaning towards that should perhaps be changed and adapted. Also, this COVID-19 pandemic revived the sense that we have to make a new beginning, to have a new order of things, we can say, what I would call great reset, but that is also connected to the Sabbath. Here's a website, Green Sabbath Project. It's not necessarily religious, but there it speaks about this question, is there nothing you can do about the environment? And then it says, as answer to it, nothing may be one of the best things you can do. One day, every week, do nothing. So if we want to save the planet, work for the environment, to get the nature in better shape, then do nothing one day every week. It's not a religious website, but yet it speaks in the same lines as the Pope is speaking about Sunday as a day of healing for the planet and also for us together. But that great reset is something that comes from the World Economic Forum, where they say that business as usual is not an option after COVID-19, with a picture of a river which used to be very polluted, but because of the lockdowns, that river was more in better shape than it was before. And then it says, well, if you see here the results of a lockdown, how nature is getting itself back together, that the river is much more cleaner than before, we should not just go on as we did before. We now should take the chance to make it different than we did before. As they say very clearly here, now is the time for a great reset, push to reset the world. So if we talk about a new world order, the words are not exactly used here, but the idea is practically the same. And as you can also see, they have a global agenda. The Great Reset is on their agenda, connected to COVID-19, as they called it, the fourth industrial revolution. They are really looking for a great and big change. And then there are other articles that speak about the same subject, how COVID-19 can be the great reset toward global sustainability. The great reset must place social justice as its center. We see a lot coming these days about social justice, and not going into the details of that specific topic for today, but we see it happening. COVID-19's legacy says this is how to create the great reset. Right, so they are really keen on this great reset. Do it right, make a new order of things so we can have global sustainability, as they have termed it. But the great reset is not just something that stands on itself. If you go to the website, they have here what they call strategic intelligence, where they put great reset in the middle and then all different keywords all around it, where different elements that we are faced with, if we read the newspapers and look around us, they work in these areas to make sure that the great reset can actually take place. They shape the economic recovery and so on. So they are working to get it done. As you see here on their website, they post their mission of the World Economic Forum is an international organization for public-private cooperation. So it's the public, the government that works together with private businesses together to work to get the mission, the agenda, the strategic intelligence and so on of the World Economic Forum to take place. And it says there, the forum engages the foremost political, business, cultural, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. But then, of course, the question is, what is on that agenda? What is the agenda that the World Economic Forum has that they want to promote? And here have politicians, business people, the cultural people and other leaders of society to work together to have this global agenda to be realized. Now, as you can see here, there are a lot of companies and organizations connected to it. This is just the letter A, not even complete. Some of you may know there are banks in there, there are HR bureaus in there, there's Apple is connected to it, and others are there also connected. It's a lot of them that are connected with the World Economic Forum, and they then will work together to achieve the agenda that they have proposed. But what is then on the agenda? Well, one of the things is what we see coming forward here on this website, avoiding a climate lockdown. As it says, the world is approaching a tipping point on climate change, and protecting the future of civilization will require dramatic interventions. Avoiding this scenario will require a green economic transformation and thus a radical overhaul of corporate governance, finance, policy, and energy systems. And then they speak also about COVID-19 and so on. But it's also speaking about an overhaul in the terms that they use here to change the order of things, to do it radically different, we can achieve a green economic transformation. And that is what they want to achieve, as the website there says. And then another website speaks about the environment, give the earth a Sabbath a day, linking it to the Sabbath as we know it also. It says here very clearly, if we all reduce our driving, shopping, and business by 1/7, we'll pollute that much less. This is already written in 27, so that's already a while ago. But still, that idea is not something that was there and slipped away. It's becoming stronger and stronger. It says here also, here in 2020, the Sabbath in an era of climate change, and then it says specifically an ancient Jewish practice may help save us all. If the Pope speaks about in his encyclicals that we are all on the same boat, we need new beginnings, we need to have salvation for all of us together, not just individuals, but as a group together. Here it says an ancient Jewish practice may help save us all, pointing towards the Sabbath as the solution to the problems that we have. And then if we connect it with what the Pope wrote in his encyclical, it will not be the seventh-day Sabbath, but the Sunday, of course. And it says here also in The Guardian, slow Sunday, the simple solution to global warming. As you can see in the yellow up there, it's already 11 years old at the time that I copied it. I think it's now 12 years old, that article, but you see it was there and it's intensifying what they speak about. And there, in that article, they went a little bit more into details and said, not long ago, Sunday used to be a day of rest, a day of spiritual renewal, a day for families to come together, but we have changed Sunday from a day of rest to a day of shopping, flying, and driving. However, in the context of excessive carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere, which are bringing catastrophic upheavals, we can and should restore Sunday to a day for Gaia, a day for the earth. Now, this is not necessarily religious to make it the Sunday a day to connect with God, but this is then Sunday to a day for Gaia, a day for the earth, so connected to not God, but to nature, that we can have achieve that environmental change that we want to see. And then it says, furthermore, there will be no great hardship in cutting down all non-essential, non-urgent use of fossil fuels for one day a week. We can easily close supermarkets, department stores, and petrol stations. We can use our mobility to the bare essentials and without harming the economy in any way. Well, they practically speak about a lockdown on one day a week, and then specifically Sunday. And then they continue also to, maybe I can say it this way, sell that idea. Then we can enjoy Sunday once more with our family and friends. We can engage in gardening, writing, painting, walking, baking bread, or simply spending time in contemplation. This will be good for our personal health as well as for the health of the planet. We have time for our friends, time to play with our children, time for the family, and so it continues that also. that they have good ideas how that Sunday will be a nice and happy day. And I was thinking of this also when the lockdown that we experienced here in Belgium first started. The first week or two, people were enjoying it. They had time to do other things than work, 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 work. And that's actually also what here is speaking about, that then we can have a time for personal health, and at the same time, the planet will heal it then, which is something that then by this Sunday to keep, we can then restore the day for the earth so that it can be in a better shape than it is now. Also, what we see happening here is San Francisco passes a work from home plan to fight climate changes in the New York Post. That was there about last year, and it says working from home may become a post pandemic way of life in one Californian community. San Francisco Bay Area officials approved a plan last week requiring large office based businesses to have employees work from home 3 days a week in a bid to fight climate change, according to a report. And then it says the decision by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission was approved 11-1 as part of a larger effort to determine what the area should look like in 30 years, and would have been unthinkable before the pandemic sent droves of workers home. And then it says there is an opportunity to do things that could not have been done in the past, said Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, a member of the commission. So as it comes forward here, it would have been unthinkable before the pandemic, but now the world apparently has changed, that things like this can actually be put into effect, and that actually can be made laws to change the way that we used to live. And also, if you require office-based businesses to have employees work from home, it's also interfering with the way we would like to do business. Furthermore, you can also read about this how to save the planet. For example, this Boris Johnson promises to protect 30% of UK's land by 2030. When I read this, okay, I thought this can be in line with the environmental efforts they put forward to save the planet, but why by 30% and why that by 2030? Where do these numbers come from? Well, Pope Francis says the pandemic has given us a chance to develop new ways of living. And he also speaks further of this, if you read the article that is posted here, that now we have the chance to do things different, because if we see things happening, then we really must take then action. And then it says, the Pope said that COVID-19 pandemic has in some ways given us a chance to develop new ways of living. Indeed, already we can see how the earth can recover if we allow it to rest. The air becomes cleaner, the water is clearer, and animals have returned to many places from where they had previously disappeared. So here he speaks again about the rest that we should give to the land also, saying that Boris Johnson was talking about, if we give the earth the rest that we need. And then he continues and says he appealed to all nations to adopt more ambitious national targets to reduce emissions in preparation for the important climate summit, which will be held in Glasgow, Scotland in November 2021. That will be not too long from now. And his message of particular relevance to the United States, the only major power to have withdrawn from the Paris Accord. And then it continues and says, by biodiversity restoration is also necessary. Francis, the Pope, says, and he urged governments to support the UN call to safeguard 30% of the earth as protected habitats by 2030 in order to stem the alarming rate of biodiversity loss. He appealed to the international community to work together to guarantee that the Summit on Biodiversity in China next October becomes a turning point in restoring the earth to be a home of life in abundance as willed by the Creator. So the 30% that Boris Johnson spoke about to achieve by 2030 is here also confirmed as, and even urged by Pope Francis, by governments to actually do. He urged governments to have this 30% by 2030 to be safeguarded of the earth, so we can then have the less of biodiversity loss. And then it says also here in this website, Catholic News Agency, Macron of France, he echoes the Pope's call for debt relief amid pandemic. The Pope says he calls, and Macron, he then echoes that call, because the Pope says we should use this pandemic to give the environment a vital rest. And the rest he then spoke about the rhythm of nature, as you recall that I shared year before, is then specifically the Sunday. And it says here, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown how the earth can recover if allowed to rest, and must spur people to adopt simpler lifestyles. So it will also affect the lifestyles that we live, to help a planet groaning under the constant demand for economic growth, Pope Francis said on that particular Tuesday. In his latest urgent appeal to help a fragile environment, Francis also renewed his call for the cancellation of the debts of the most vulnerable countries. And such action would be just, he said, since rich countries have exploited poorer nations' natural resources. In some way, the current pandemic has led us to rediscover simpler and sustainable lifestyles, Francis said in a written message. So he speaks about new beginnings that we have to make. Here he says, this pandemic has helped us to rediscover a new way, another way, a simpler way of life that is more sustainable. And citing the medical, social, and economic crisis triggered by the pandemic, Francis said it was time for restorative justice. Talking about new beginning, talking about change, it's time to have restorative justice, time to heal, which he links specifically to the Sunday. We also need to ensure that the recovery package being developed and deployed at global, regional, and national levels must be regeneration packages, Francis said, without naming any particular nations or regions. Drawing attention to Earth's fragility is a hallmark of Francis' papacy. He pointedly stressed people's pressing responsibilities to heal and care for the environment in a 2015 encyclical, which I just shared here before with you, Laudato Si, specifically the rhythm of nature to be restored, and then to have the Sabbath on the Sunday. The Pontiff issued this appeal on Tuesday to mark the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation, an annual occasion that was established for Christians in the wake of the encyclical Laudato Si. And as you have seen also before, Protestants are joining in those prayer calls of the Pontiff, the Pope. Now here it continues also about the Laudato Si in relation to the ecological debt, where Pope Francis affirms that a true ecological debt exists, particularly between the global north and south, connected to commercial imbalances with effects. And then he continues in this regard, but he says there's an ecological debt, as it also spoke about the COVID pandemic, that it's a response from nature to the misuse of humans, of how we treat our planet. We have an ecological debt, as he here points out. And then it says, nature never cancels our debt. So the question is asked, who will pay this ecological debt? But then he says here that our sister, Mother Earth, provides us everything that we need to live. We are enormously indebted to her. In return, we ought to cultivate and care for her. And then he says, a Sabbath for the earth is our debt. So nature never cancels our debts that we have towards it. And the Sabbath for the earth is the problem, then, or the solution to the problem that we can then have to allow her to enjoy Sabbath. He then specifically says in that regard. Now, Pope Francis on the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation, if you read what he says there, he says, dear brothers and sisters, each year, particularly since the publication of the encyclical Laudato Si, the first day of September is celebrated by the Christian family as the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation, the beginning of the season of creation, which concludes on the feast of St. Francis of Assisi on the 4th of October. During this period, Christians worldwide renew their faith in God of creation and join in prayer and work for the care of our common home. He speaks about that term common home and also common good in other places. actually resounding what we have heard already before, that we are in the same boat. We are not on this by ourselves, we are in this together. And then he says, I'm very pleased that the theme chosen by the economical family for the celebration of the 2020 season of creation is Jubilee for the Earth, precisely in this year that marks the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. In the Holy Scriptures, a Jubilee is a sacred time to remember, return, rest, restore, and rejoice. A Jubilee for the Earth, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is practically not a religious anniversary, but they connect it to the Holy Scriptures. And then also that call to return to rest, restore, and also rejoice. Now, furthermore, someone you may have heard about, Greta, when she speaks about the climate strikes and so on, she asks also for a return to the Sabbath. It's not just only religious powers that speak about it. Greta Thunberg's weekly climate strikes, which have grown to include millions of people worldwide, essentially combines the practice of giving ourselves and nature a rest into the same day for the same practical reason of the Sabbath, to maintain the abundant nature of the creation. After escaping slavery, or wealth was concentrated into a few hands and society was stratified to different classes. Here, Greta Thunberg is also connecting it to what the Bible says. Moses taught the Hebrew people, numbering in the thousands, how to live in a scarce desert by reintroducing their tribal traditions from when they still live with the land as indigenous people. And Greta's message is much the same, but this time it's billions of people that need to be able to survive on an increasingly scarce planet that's being over-harvested. Well, what was it that Moses taught the Hebrew people, numbering in the thousands? What did he reintroduce to them? If you read the scriptures when that speaks about that time, it's that the Sabbath was reintroduced to the Israelites at that time. So he says here, we have to combine the same things here together to give the nature a rest into the same day for the same practical reason. So here is a non-religious movement that is taking also a religious connotation to make sure that they can ensure that a rest for the creation will take place. Well, Ellen White writes, the word of God teaches that these scenes are to be repeated as Roman Catholics and Protestants shall unite for the exaltation of the Sunday. But she also says Papists, Protestants, and worldlings will alike accept the form of godliness without the power, and they will see in this union a grand movement for the conversion of the world and the ushering in of the long-expected millennium. Or they've named it nowadays by the title that has been given by the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. Some speak of it as the New World Order, but here what Ellen White wrote those many years ago is what we actually now are seeing taking place around us. The Great Reset that is combining so many different areas together to achieve that Great Reset by their strategic intelligence is combining also the Papists, the Protestants, and the worldlings together to have a changed world from now on. As here it says that Macron echoes Pope's call for the pandemic. Boris Johnson is talking in the same lines. We see here Joe Biden that has been elected as President of the United States, where he says, let's do this together. Actually resounding also what the Pope has been saying, we're in the same boat, we have to do this together, not just by ourselves. We see also that the Catholics are for Biden, and also that 60 years after JFK, Biden, a second Catholic president, offers a refresh in the church's political role. What Ellen White was speaking about is what we see here also happening, and it's not just Ellen White that speaks about it. Revelation 13, verse 1 to 3 speaks in this line and says, then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority, and I saw one of his heads as it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. The prophecy of Revelation 13, which in Adventist history has been applied specifically to the Catholic Church. And here, if we have now looked at a few things that you can just find on the internet that's out there for everyone to see, we kind of see this happening as it was prophesied here before. So the question that the prophecies of the Bible and as Adventists have usually interpreted these, is it unthinkable? Well, the New World Order of Corona, the Great Reset and so on is something that they are speaking about now, which is businesses, non-religious people, but also the Pope as the frontman for the religious world, if I can say it that way. But is it a fulfillment of prophecy? Well, we don't know specifically yet how it will evolve, but certainly I see it as a confirmation that what is now happening, what is speaking about in the prophecies, is not so strange in and of itself. When people speak about prophecy as all that something of all times, it may have been something that was more relevant in the times that the Adventists just started the Adventist Church. Well, here we see a confirmation that what the prophecies speak about is coming together more and more. Furthermore, Corona, if I look back to the period that we have had for a little while now, it taught me that it can just about change. I remember the day that the lockdown for Belgium was announced. I was not at home. I was in another place in Belgium. I was helping a friend there, stayed over the night, but actually I was not really officially allowed even to drive back home because of that lockdown. It can just about change. No one had expected before those lockdowns that it would suddenly come, and if someone would speak just a week or two before that all of Belgium would be locked down, all of the world even would be in a lockdown, would have been called crazy. But it can just about change. The current status of the world can change just maybe overnight even. And that it taught me that biblical prophecy, which speaks about things which are maybe strange, if you look to the previous order before the pandemic that we have seen, in itself, it is not so strange. Things can change just about overnight. And it also taught me that the preparation that we talk about as Adventists, preparing for the coming of Jesus, needs to be beforehand. I was not at home at the time that the lockdown was introduced here in Belgium. I had to prepare beforehand, as we also see the coming of Jesus coming. Then we have to be prepared beforehand. At the time when it is there, it can be too late to prepare. So this Corona pandemic was for me a wake-up call. Well, I think I was a little bit awake already, but it's again a wake-up call to indeed make earnest preparation beforehand, be okay with the Lord beforehand, because as the time comes, we may not have that much time to do the changes that may need to take place in our lives. Now, to conclude here with Luke 21, when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. And then he spoke to them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they are already budding, you see and know for yourselves that summer is now near. So you also, when you see these things happening, know that the kingdom of God is near. If we look towards the future, it may be a dark future, but there is a glowing light at the horizon, the coming of Jesus, that we will be home together with him in the New Jerusalem, that his coming is imminent, just in place before us, and let us prepare for that great moment that we can join again and give each other corona-free hugs in the New Jerusalem. Amen.